Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is our first episode, Dr. Daniels, for 2019. So we have made it another year. We have a little bit over 80 episodes total now. So if you haven't missed any or you just came on and found out about us, please go back, look at some of the archive footage on Enoch Baptist Church YouTube page and the Everyday Strong page on SoundCloud. And you could also find us on iTunes. All right, Dr. Daniels, it's the first of the year. And you know what that means. That means New Year's resolutions.
Right.
Now today's the 8th. Okay, so we're almost in the second full week. So if you haven't given up yet on your New Year's resolution, we want to make sure that everybody has the biblical tools possible to make sure your 2019 starts out fresh and continues on strong.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, as you know, most people that make New Year's resolutions, by the time January is over with, they're done.
Right.
They're no longer working on those resolutions. And a part of it is because I guess some of the things we do are unrealistic for each of us. But then sometimes we just don't get the desired results because we're not, doing them doing the right things. So, when you look at, a new beginning, let's say, and that's what I look at, a new beginning. To me, a new year is a time for a new beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And the Bible kind of puts it this way. It says that old things are passed away and all things become as new. So if my New Year's resolution really ought to be centered around how can I let those old things go, that were inhibiting me from progress? And how can I pick up new things that will help move my progress along? And that's kind of how I look at it. That's what I try to do myself. And so I look at it in a couple of ways. What are the things that inhibit our progress the most? Well, one is our relationship with God. If you don't have a strong relationship with God, then it's very difficult for the Christian or for anybody as far as that matters to really be prosperous, And the other thing is, financial stability, because most of us, as we know, if you're not financially stable, then it's not an easy time for you.
Right.
People,
Right.
they say things like, well, money can't buy happiness, and it can't buy happiness, but it's much easier to be happy with money than without money.
That's right.
Just that simple. And the other thing is relationships, right? Because, those are really three things: the personal relationships with people, whether they be with your wife, family members, whatever. When relationships are in the, underground, then we are underground as well. So those are the three things that I look at and say, well, what do I do to improve myself in those areas? Well, so I look at the most important one first, which is my relationship with God. And so what should my New Year's resolution be to help me focus on improving my relationship with God? Now, for most of us, what I find is that we tend to come to God as if He is welfare.
Mm-hmm.
It's that, Lord, what can I get? What can I get? What can I get? So for me, my New Year's resolution has always been focused on not what can I get from God, but what can I give to God. What can I give as far as my service? What can I do better to promote the kingdom? And how can I work in that regard? Because what I find is that the more you get a feeling of self-renewal and self-satisfaction and self-motivation from anything that you're doing, the easier it is to continue it. And so some people, for example, their New Year's resolution say, I'm going to come to church every Sunday. Great New Year's resolution.
Right.
I love it. But if you only come to church every Sunday, you don't necessarily get the fulfillment and that sense of contributing and that kind of thing. But when you make a New Year's resolution that deals with how you want to serve God more, then even though you're putting out, you get back. I cannot tell you how wonderful it feels when you make a resolution that involves your helping feed the poor, let's say, or those kind of things. And then you kind of see how the smile on people's faces and those kind of things you're progressing. So to me, that's what you focus on is that let me make a resolution that says how can I serve God by serving God's people. You know.
Interesting that you say that, because I feel like a lot of times people are not they don't make the right type of goals.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes people get goals confused with tasks.
Right.
So first thing you got to analyze, what's the difference between a goal and a task?
Mm-hmm.
And a task is paying a water bill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got to pay the water bill this month. That's a task.
Sure.
That's not really a goal.
Right.
Like, so a goal, and then the next step above that is, what is your dream?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So like, what is your ultimate dream that you want to have? Then what's the goals that you got to place in there in order to reach that dream or achieve that dream? Right. And then what tasks you got to do in order to get there? Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people's New Year's resolutions fail because they never get a full grasp of what they actually want or what their dream is. So therefore, to bring it full circle, if I sit down and pray to God and I don't even know what I really want, and then I pray, mm-hmm. and then He gives it to me. He's like, well, that ain't really what I want. I said, well, you prayed to me what you wanted, and I gave it to you. Mm-hmm. So that's what I always tell people, is that before you sit down to pray on something, understand what you're praying for. Mm-hmm. Because God has a way of doing things. Like, you can pray for something, and you be like, you know what? I'm going through a lot right now. But I prayed for such and such, but it's coming. Mm-hmm. But you got to shed a whole bunch of others, like you said, leave stuff behind in 2018. Mm-hmm. You got to leave some stuff, and sometimes it's people that you got to leave behind.
Absolutely.
And everybody talked about who they taking into 2019 on social media, who they leaving in 2018. And it's true that you're going to have to do some things like that. But why are you doing it? And what's the ultimate goal, so you can make sure that the ultimate dream, so you get the goal straight and your task straight in order to get the desired results that you want.
Oh, absolutely. And just to point out, if I'm going to develop a goal, it has to be something that I can measure, so I know if I have reached the goal, right? Mm-hmm. Because if I don't do that, I never know if I even reached the goal. And that's why, I say that's why, to me, if my goal is to grow closer to God, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's my or let's say that's my dream, or people, they interchange the two. But let's say this is my dream, or my focus. Let me use that term better. That's my focus, is to grow closer to God. So I say, well, if that's where I'm trying to get to, is a closer relationship, then what goals do I establish to get me to that point, right? Mm-hmm. So what do I do? And see, to me, service is an easy thing that you can do because you can measure that. Mm-hmm. See, it's easy to measure if my service is effective, right? Because you can measure, you can say, well, in doing that, for example, I'm going to ensure that I, give X amount of hours to service. I can measure if I gave the hours. Now, the thing I have to look at too, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, is I have to be asking myself, well, if I'm giving that service, am I being effective in what I'm trying to do, right? Because mm-hmm. sometimes you can give of the time and not get the desired result. Because if your goal is just to give a certain amount of hours, like as you pointed out earlier, it doesn't mean necessarily that what you're doing will give you that sense of inner peace or that sense of accomplishment that you've asked for. Right? So I have to look at it in terms of, again, looking at the Bible and says, what does the Bible say? How should my goals be centered around service? Like, for example, Jesus said, if you give a cup of water to a hungry person, someone who's thirsty, it's like giving it to me. If you feed a hungry person, it's like feeding me. If you clothe the naked, it's like clothing me. If you visit the person that's in prison or in the hospital, it's like visiting me. So I'm saying, when you look at that service, you have to be sensitive based on that kind of thing. What am I hoping to accomplish? And we have to distinguish between the outcome and the output as well, right? Mm-hmm. Because the output may not necessarily give me the outcome, mm-hmm. right? So I have to be saying, well, what outcome am I looking for? And do I establish my goal based on that outcome? Or do I establish my goal based on the effort I put in? Now, me personally, I like to always establish my goals based on the outcome, because that's what I'm looking to achieve, mm-hmm. right? As you pointed out, I'm looking to achieve something. So I establish my goals based on the outcome So let's say I'm saying I want to start tutoring kids, right? Well, what I'm looking for is at least one grade point increase in all the kids that I tutor. Right. So I may only tutor one kid because it may only be one kid that comes to me. But if that one kid goes from a C to a B, then I have accomplished that goal. And if I get 10 kids, if they go from whatever their grades are, if they go up, I've accomplished that goal. If I don't do it that way, because that's the outcome, I might tutor 20 kids, but that don't mean I've been successful, in the output. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. And that's when I look at the way the Bible looks at service and the things that we should be doing, it makes it a little easier to establish that because the Bible kind of gives us the outcomes that we should be looking for rather than just the outputs that we should be trying to get out of it.
Yeah, and then you should also take into account too what a lot of people don't realize. It takes time. Mm-hmm. They don't give their goals enough time to mature.
Sure.
To where, because a lot of times things change. Mm-hmm. Just because you wrote down a piece of paper, that's why they got an eraser or another sheet of paper. You can change your goal. So if you are trying to get closer to God by giving to other people, or let's say like your example, tutoring. All right, you go tutor 20 kids, and let's say none of the grade point averages increase. Mm-hmm. That's not the outcome or the result that you wanted. But if you're just in it for yourself, you say, well, God, I tutored. Mm-hmm. He's like, well, you did tutor. Right. But what did you get accomplished while doing that? Mm-hmm. And that's just some of the things you got to ask yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to be in vain. You did do something. Sure. Just like, we talk about people who, go to church and they sit in church looking to get. Mm-hmm. Okay, you got some credit for being in church, but you were supposed to be in church to give, not to just only get.
Right.
And I like what you said, because I think about, Pastor, all the times in my life where I did stuff for other people, looking to just genuinely give. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really think about it. And I noticed that when I'm in the routine of doing that, other good things happen to me.
Absolutely.
And then when I fall out of routine, like I can easily tell if I'm in a rut, I know what to do. I say, okay, now it's time for me to go give, mm-hmm. not go beg and need to the Lord. So please help me out. I'm in bad shape. Sure. He'll give me the answers, but a lot of times is go and just do what He wants you to go do.
Absolutely. And the more, we used to sing a song when I was younger in the church. The more you give, the more He gives to you. And that's true. That the more you give, the more God gives to you, and the more you look not to receive, the more you tend to get. Mm-hmm. Because getting is not just materialistic. Getting material goods doesn't necessarily put you in a place of peace. Doesn't necessarily put you in a place where you are really feeling good about your life. But the things I found that make you feel better about your life, especially from a service standpoint, is when you can see other people benefiting from what you are doing. Mm-hmm. That's what makes you feel great. And so, again, there's so many ways that we can make an adjustment. And just like you said, it is not an overnight process. So we have to develop some milestones, to say, well, we expect this at this point and so forth and so on. So we can see ourselves getting there. And then, again, it's the same thing with finances, like you said earlier, many people have a New Year's resolution to either get out of debt or to become financially stable, but they have no way of doing it, And the Bible is clear on that. And it is so simple. It just, to me personally, I don't understand why everyone doesn't follow that rule. We follow that 80-20 rule in other things of life, right? But we don't follow the same 80-20 rules the Bible lays out for finances. There's a historical event in the scripture where one of the patriarchs of the Bible is told to let Pharaoh know that there will be devastation in the land. Mm-hmm. And that in order to avoid that devastation, that he is to always put aside 1/5 of everything that's produced, right? Which is roughly 20%, right? Which means that if I'm putting aside 1/5, I'm only working with 4/5. And so that suggests to every person that is trying to gain financial freedom that your goal should be for the upcoming year to get to the point where you are only required to live off a maximum of 80% of your income.
Right.
You know, that's your goal, because that's a biblical principle. So I have to look at it in one of two ways, right? I have to either increase income, or if I'm not there, increase income or reduce debt. You know, one of two ways. I should say reduce expenses. That's probably better to point it out. Increase income or reduce expenses. Well, most of us can't go to our boss and say, hey, you know, I want more money. You know, if your employees come to you and just say, I want more money, well, so do I.
Right,
you know?
right. That's right.
Increase profits and we might get more money. So the thing that I have control over is my expenses. Not all of them, but I have control over, you know, my expenses. And so that's another thing that I can actually measure. I can tell how close I'm getting to reaching that standard that the Bible has set up. You know, am I getting to where I am living off of 80% of my income?
Right.
And I can measure that. I know how far I am from that, and I can set goals to get me there. I can set strategies to get me there. And the other key thing about that, again, if I'm living off 80%, so what do I do with the other 20%? Well, again, that's there too, right? Because at 10%, the Bible says, bring me all the tithes into the storehouse. And tithe means, you know, for 10th. So I give a 10th of it, I'm paying a 10th to God, and a 10th I'm putting away, you know. And I tell most people, because most people that, you know, you deal with have been working more than 10 years. But think about it, and it's so simple. If I'm doing that, then, and I've been doing it for a reasonable period of time, I would have an entire year's salary in no time set aside.
Right.
You know, an entire year. And I won't have really been working hard to do it. You know, once you get in the habit of doing that, it is so easy to go from living off of 80% to living off 75%, living off 70%. And I just want the homeowners to really know how easy it is. Because if you're a homeowner, you don't think about it always how simple it is. Well, see, a homeowner, their mortgage doesn't go up.
Right.
But the renter goes up. And even though the renter's living expense goes up, they can still do it because they're getting increases in salary. If I'm a homeowner, my mortgage doesn't go up. What we tend to do is extra money we tend to spend. You don't spend it. You reduce the level at which you are living based on the percentage of income. So if I just got to 80% this year, then next year I probably get to 75% easily.
Right.
Because inflation means my salary's going to go up, but my expenses probably going to pretty much not go up at that same rate. And so when you do things like that, it allows us to become and position ourselves so that we are financially stable in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and the new wave of that for a business aspect is a 70-30. You know, to save the 10% for taxes.
Sure.
You know, then on the forgot the guy's name, but it's Book Profit First. Then when the tax season come around and you do your tax returns, and let's say you don't owe what you saved, guess what you got?
Right.
You got extra money, and that you can take on vacation or do whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
with
if you think about it, it's the same thing.
Right.
Right. I mean, either way, you know why? Because if you're an employee, the 10% has already came out.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
And if your employer, it hasn't come out yet.
Right.
So it's really the same formula. But what most people don't get is it's biblical. You know,
right.
that principle is not one that some great mind, you know, that some economist pulled out of. It's a biblical principle that's been there for thousands of years. I mean, when I say thousands, I mean this was thousands of years before Christ was born.
Right. That
this principle was established. And so it's an old principle. It worked then, and it still works now. Because the biblical principles are timeless.
Yeah. And just like with anything, what's easy to do is also easy not to do.
Absolutely.
And that's where at some point you just gotta just sit down with yourself and say, I am going to do this. And you know, another philosopher says, in order to do, you must be. You know, so it's like if you want to be healthy, then you'll do healthy things.
Right.
You know, so it's like, so if you want to be financially, what they said called financially fit, you will do financially fit things throughout your life. You know, you won't go spend the $1,600-$1,700 on the TV when it's the 75 inches on sale for the Super Bowl for $995, but it was $1,600. Like, well, that's a good deal. You're like, wait a minute, do I really need a TV?
That's the key right there.
Right.
Is asking oneself, am I getting it because I want it, or am I getting it because I need it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm trying to get to the 80-20 principle, I only buy what I need. Right. Only buy what I need. But if I want to go below that, let's say I even want to get to 60-40, because at some point, I mean, when you're young, 80-20, you want to get really below that because you're looking for retirement, that kind of thing. Or if you're looking to buy a house. But let's say, you get to 70-30, right? Then you're at a place where you can say, I can buy it if I want it. Not just I can buy it if I need it.
Mm-hmm.
But even buying it because you want it, you don't break the rule. Right? You still stick to the 70-30 or the 80-20 rule. Whichever rule you set up for your finances, you stick to the rule, but you when you're trying to get to that percentage, it's always, do I need it? Always, do I need it? I don't care if you do get to mid-year and you say, well, I'm already there. No, this year is still the same principle.
Right.
Do I need it versus do I want it? Once you complete the year, the reason why I say that, because if you get off it, by the time the end of the year comes, you won't be where you want to be.
Right.
So you stick to it for the year, boom, then you're locked in. Now it's habit forming. And so now that you're there and you've been there for a while, then you can start saying, okay, let me get some of the things I want. Now, as opposed to just what I need, because you should reward yourself. If you don't reward yourself, you'll get off quicker.
Right. You're absolutely right. You will. And the interesting thing is talking about habit, how the general rule of thumb is 21 days to form a habit. Mm-hmm. Once again, I forgot the name of the book, but studies have shown that it's not 21 days. It's actually like 3 months for you to form an actual habit. And that's the reason why a lot of people end up falling off the wagon. And in fitness, it takes 12 weeks for you to see the results. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people that start working out, they don't see the results because they're not working. You got to work out consistently for 12 weeks. Right. 12 weeks. And from when I played ball, every off-season segment of workout was 8 weeks. Mm-hmm. So, and they would measure everything at week 1, and then at the end of the eighth week, then they would measure everything again. You took a break, and you went to spring practice. Mm-hmm. So if they're measuring us at 8 weeks in college, big time college football, what makes us think that we're going to see a result working out for 3 weeks? You work out for the month of January, and you think, okay, right now you might not lose 8 pounds. And
you never do, and that's true for the gamut, right? It's true. Like if you're, let's say we look at the first principle we talked about. If you're looking at my relationship with God, right? 21 days that's not going to do it. 2 months is not necessarily going to do it. If you're talking about financial freedom, the same principle. 1 month is not going to do it, and 2 months is not going to do it. If you're talking about relationships, which is the third thing that I mentioned early on, a month is not going to do it. 2 months is not going to do it. And it is you can put in a small milestone to say, have I moved any movement? And sometimes a milestone, and I'll say this, especially in financial freedom, sometimes the milestone is not moving forward. Sometimes the milestone is not moving backwards. Mm-hmm. Because if I look at what's happening to me, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that can identify with this, sometimes what I see is that I am losing ground financially. Mm-hmm. I'm getting deeper and deeper and deeper. So my milestone may be to stop the slide. Mm-hmm. So my first milestone just may be to stop the slide. My second milestone may be to maintain that same level for a while. And then the next milestone may be to start coming out, And that's true with whatever, it's saying with physical fitness, right. With whatever it is, and it's especially physical fitness, because the more you are dormant, the less physically fit you are. Right?
That's right.
So you're constantly going downhill because of age, because of dormance and whatever. So my first milestone may just be to stop the slide.
Stop the slide, right.
and then level off and then come back up. So, you may go a month and be like, nothing happened. Well, but something may have happened. You may have lost 1 pound, right? But you may be able to run the mile that you couldn't run before.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or walk the mile you couldn't walk before.
And then what I've also talked with people, they go through a month and they save, say they make $2,000, they save $200.
Mm-hmm.
And then the radiator go out in the car.
Mm-hmm.
See what I'm saying? Like, what's the point of saving the money? And then, then I got to put it in the car. And I said, well, you had the money because you saved it.
Right.
You're saving the money for the events that happen like this. And this event is not going to happen all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So and if it does, then I tell people, it's like, well, if you're going 6 months and you're paying $300-400 to fix your car, you got a car note.
Mm-hmm.
On the old, it's like you got to make a decision. Do I trade this car and get a new car, or because at some point you got to come to the realization.
Sure.
So a lot of times for people, I think they just, instead of looking at it from what good can happen,
mm-hmm.
they're so quick to find out or try to find the negative so they can stop doing it.
Oh, absolutely.
For that magical excuse of why this ain't happening for me.
You make an excellent point, and I can tell you, in relationship with God, I hear people say that all the time. That before I started coming to church, I didn't have all these problems. Now all hell breaking loose since I came to church. No, hell was always breaking loose. You didn't have a great relationship with before you came to church with people around you. That's why you came to church.
Mm-hmm.
You wasn't getting promoted on your job before. That's why you came to church. But what happened is your expectations changed, right? You expected when you came to church that all of a sudden everything was going to just mellow out and it's going to be great, right? And just like you said earlier, your expectations about your car not breaking down changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your car was always a piece of junk,
Right?
But your expectations changed, and you say, "Well, all the money I saved, I put into the car." But what you said was right on the money. You may not have came up, but you remain stable.
Right.
Because before you didn't have the money.
Right.
At least now you have the money.
Right.
So that initial goal or initial milestone, I should say, of stopping the slide, you accomplished.
Right.
Because the whatever repair you had to make, you had the money to deal with the repair. So you stopped the slide. And after a while, you fix everything on your car. After a while, you got a brand new car.
Right, that's right.
A brand new car.
And then it was really crazy is if you go get a payday loan.
Ooh.
That's that 26-30% interest on it, and you never can get a $200 bill paid off.
Years and years go by.
Right. But that's why you save the 20%. So if some stuff like that happens, you got the financial means to be able to take care of it. Mm-hmm. You're right then and there. Yeah. And then now, since we're on the financial thing, is coming to my little house for a little bit. Is I often ask people, I say, well, how many streams of income
mm-hmm.
do you have?
Mm-hmm.
And how many streams of income do you have? And then what happens if one faucet starts getting turned off?
Mm-hmm.
The general rule of thumb is to have 6 to 7 different streams of income,
mm-hmm.
which means you have to have 6 to 7 different abilities to be able to make some type of money.
Mm-hmm.
All of them won't have to be on the same level, of course.
Sure.
But you should be focused on, if you are a plumber for Johnny Blow's plumbing services, you should have some type of side hustle on the side where you do plumbing
mm-hmm.
on your own.
Mm-hmm.
To where eventually, Dr. Daniels, where you want to be able to leave Johnny Blow's company
sure.
and start your own company to do your own thing. But I find that where people they get stuck on that one thing and they don't develop number 2 or just number 3. But for 2019, I want to tell people, if you only have one stream of income, mm-hmm. 2019, by June,
mm-hmm.
I want you to have 2.
Right.
And try to make that second one 25% as much as your main one is coming. And then, like we just got through saying, guess what you got? Right. You've developed a plan to where you be able to put the 20. If you get the 25%, you just automatically throw that in the savings account. You're good to go.
Right. Well, most people don't have that. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, studies will show that 80% of people have one stream of income. 80% of people. Because 80% of most people, their only stream of income is employment. That's it. But what you're saying makes sense. You know, you ought to. The thing that people have to understand is this. A couple of things. You know, is that is how to develop the stream. I think that's the key. Is people need to understand how to develop the streams of income. If you're developing streams of income based on you working, you can't do 6 because you can't work 6 jobs.
Right.
So we have to educate people as to how to develop the streams of income. So what's happening is their money is making money for them, or their other assets are making money for them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because if I'm working at Burger King, let's say, and I'm on the cash register, at that point, the only way I probably know how to get more money is working more hours, right? And so it becomes a point where I kill myself. But even that person that's working at Burger King can get another stream of income. It might be small, but they can get another stream because where you put your money can generate income.
That's right.
You know, right? I mean, now lie a little bit. If I go from a renter to a homeowner, I've generated income.
Right.
It may be small because number one, I'm not losing money. And if you're not losing money, either you're neutral or you're making money. Right. So what you say is so important. And maybe what we need to do at some point in time is do a series on that for the average person. You know, if I'm a worker, you know, and I'm not a business owner, you know, and I'm a secretary, how do I do that? You know, and I think that would be an excellent topic to deal with because most people, let's say 80% of people don't know how and therefore don't do. And as you pointed out, so when they retire, they have only one stream of income then. Right. And that's Social Security. And that's not a lot of money.
No, it's not.
You know, and so it causes them problems. So I think that's a great topic. I think that's a great segue to the next time we talk, actually.
Yeah, it is.
You know.
Because a lot of people really don't get it and don't understand it. I even talk to other business owners when I do business coaching, and I say, okay, I say, for instance, if you own a salon, okay, what other avenue does a salon make money on? Does it make money off retail? Does it make money off other things in the salon yourself? How much are you working in the salon? You know, you can own the salon and work in that, just like the same thing with a barber shop. And most people do that. And so what other things can you do? And then the interesting thing is when I talk to guys who own barbershops, you know, the crazy thing is they are having trouble getting barbers to come in to work. And this is an industry where you can't make money unless you're at work. And they're missing money, you know. So there's a slew of things that I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying. A lot of people, it's probably more or less 90% of people don't realize that they do need a second and third stream of income, but they also don't know how to do it because they're barely above water now, you know. But just like how we were saying, if you are barely above water, but I gave you a little teacup, and you were to take that little bit of water and manage to flip it out to another bucket, the water that you're in is going to start coming down. Then you'll not be underwater, not struggling to stay there. And then now you're able to get out of it, you know.
Well, everybody can. You know, when I was an undergrad, and I was a finance major in undergrad, I had an instructor, Dr. Choi. And Dr. Choi told us, he said, listen, it is better to have 10 investments giving you $10 a piece than one investment giving you $100, even though they both equal the same.
Right.
You know. Now, I took his advice, and I can tell you, I am much more secure than my friends my contemporaries who I know who took the other route. I'm not saying they're not secure, but I'm just saying it's a different ballgame. It diversifies you. And what people often assume is that a little bit of something is not that good. Well, yes, it is. You know, a couple of dollars here and a couple of dollars there and a couple of dollars there, that it adds up after a while. That's what I'm saying. Even if you are at Burger King flipping burgers, you still can set some things up so that you're not the one working. That, you know, money is working for you or something else is going on for you to make some things happen. Let me tell you, old school people did it all the time. All the time, right? You know, for example, back in the 60s, ladies who, let's say, were not well educated, right, had 4 and 5 kids. Um, their their husbands may not have been there for whatever reason, and they would still go out and buy a home, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But in that home, they would make sure there was always an extra room. In an extra room, they always put a tenant.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that meant that they were getting extra money and not working not one extra job.
That's right.
You know, but a little bit of money was coming in. Then it could have been a relative they would let them come in, or a good friend, or whatever.
Right.
But that was a standard thing. And see, you could always rent a room from somebody back in the 60s and the 70s,
mm-hmm.
because that was a way of people generating extra money without them having to work harder.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And some of those same ladies would sell dinners
mm-hmm.
out of their home. Well, you're cooking for the family anyway. It's not like you're cooking harder.
Right.
You know, because the pot of beans is the pot of beans, you know, whether
right.
you boil for, you know. And guess what? The guys would come by and buy
right.
lunch or buy dinner. So I'm just using an example to say there's always a way to generate some extra income. I mean, we may be in a modern age now, but it's still a way,
mm-hmm.
to generate extra income, like you said. So it's, like I said, I just think it's a great topic. I think we just need to make that the next topic, and so people understand no matter where you are in life, you can always find a way to be better financially. But there's going to be some concrete things to do, because most people, the reason why they don't do is because they don't know how to do,
mm-hmm.
don't know what to do,
mm-hmm.
and don't believe in what they can do.
That's right.
Yeah,
we'll definitely dive a little bit more deeper into that topic. And thank y'all so much for joining us on this new podcast for 2019. Hope your resolutions stay live and well all the way through. This is your host, CB Baker.